This is your review for your exam. You do need to show your work, and you can write the problems down or just try your best to copy as much as you can and then write your answer and then pause, work it out, and then check and see if your answer matches mine. That will probably be your best way of reviewing for your 9 weeks test. Which numbers are irrational? Select all that apply. You are going to try to go back and remember the difference between rational and irrational. So, for instance, on rational, remember that we discussed that you could use FRT, F for fraction, R for repeating, T for terminating. And remember, just a quick review, that irrational numbers are numbers that can't turn into fractions. Okay, so A is rational because it repeats. B is rational because it's a fraction. C needs to be simplified before we look at this. I did tell you that pi is irrational. However, on this one, pi can be reduced because it is pi over itself, and anything over itself is going to reduce to 1. So it is rational because anything divided by itself is 1. So D is irrational because 1/2 times pi is going to give you a long, messy decimal that cannot turn into a fraction. On number 2, consider the expression, the square root of n, for which value of n is the expression irrational. So your square root of n, you're going to look and see n equals 4. Well, if you take the square root of 4, that reduces to 2. And then go down the line and see which one is irrational, which means it's not going to be a perfect square. So the square root of 9 equals 3. The square root of 15 gives you a long, messy decimal. And the square root of 16 is 4. So C is your correct answer. Study the equation 2 times x plus 6 equals mx plus 12. Which value of m results in the equation having infinitely many solutions? Which means it's going to equal the same on both sides when it's reduced or simplified. So we're going to take this equation and we're going to do the only thing that we can possibly do right now, which is distribute. When we distribute, we're going to multiply everything inside the parentheses by 2. And you get 2x plus 12 equals mx plus 12. We notice that we have an x that matches on both sides and plus 12 that matches on both sides. The only thing that's left is the number that's in front of x. And if I told you that they were the same, then m is 2. How many times larger is 8 times 10 to the 6th than 4 times 10 to the 3rd, and why? You are going to divide, and you're going to go ahead and put parentheses around. Use your scientific notation. When you put in this in scientific notation, you're going to say 8 times 10 to the 6th divided by 4 times 10 to the 3rd, and you are going to get B. Which expression is which expressions are equivalent to 1/8. So here, you're deciding how you want to work the problem. There are several different ways. You can change every one of these and simplify it to a fraction, or you can change your fraction, which is 1 divided by 8, into a decimal, which is what I would do, and then compare the rest of your choices. So A does not give you 0.125, neither does B. C does give you 0.125, okay, and then D as well. You could use your exponent rules, because 2 to the third power is going to give you 1/8, and then also this is going to reduce to 1/8 as well. And the reason why is because 2 squared is 4, bring over 32, which can reduce to 1/8. Always make sure that you are using your calculator. Show as much work as you can, and that helps a lot. Which fraction is equivalent to 0.583 repeating? There are several different ways to do this. If you don't know how to put a repeating decimal in your calculator, you would want to go ahead and change these choices to a decimal, and you would get C, because 7 divided by 12 does match up with your repeating decimal. Here on 7 and 8, you are going to simply change these to scientific or to standard form. So you have $20,100,000,000,000, and part A says, what is country-wise projected 2017 debt value written in scientific notation? So you're simply going to move the decimal behind the 2. So you should get 2.01 times 10 to the whatever power here. So we got to count up to see how many we moved. Or you can type this in your calculator and put it in scientific mode, and you will get to the 13th power, which is A. Be very careful about how many zeros you put in, because that's a lot. So just slow down and be careful with what you're typing in. On B, you have where you have this is in scientific notation, and you're wanting to change it to standard form. Again, be careful, because you're going to move this 9 places, and then you are going to end up with B. Which defines an irrational number correctly? Okay, this is just a review from what we did on number 1, knowing the difference between rational and irrational. Remember, rational are repeating, terminating, and fractions. And also, we know that irrational numbers cannot turn to fractions, so your answer is C. However, the only thing that may confuse you is this: a number with a square root that is an integer. Integers are your positives and your negatives. So your square root of like 36 can be a positive -6, and that is rational. So it can't be D, B, or A. (10 and 11). On 10, part A if you will enlarge your screen enough so that you can see in between the decimals, because this is a very specific decimal that's going from 9.5 all the way to 10, and it's 9.5, then a space, then 9.6, and so on. So this one is asking you for pi squared. And if you put pi squared in your calculator, you'll get around 9.86. And if you'll look closely, 9.86 is going to fall in between 9.8 and 9.9. It won't be 9.8, it won't be 9.9. In between is H, which is C. So do some elimination, study what you have, and then you can figure out the rest. 11 is which point on the number line represents the closest approximation of the square root of 93. And the square root of 93 is going to be about 9.6. So about 9.6, the closest thing to that is F. Here, examine the equations. Which equation has exactly one solution? When you're looking for one solution, remember it is x equals, or any variable equals a number, whether it's 0, because that can be an answer, 1, 2, 3, and so on. No solutions, remember, are not going to equal to each other. And many solutions, or infinitely many solutions, are going to be equal to each other. So we're going to just take each equation apart, and we're going to look at it and try to simplify them. So we're going to start with the first one, 2x plus 1 plus x equals 2x plus 6. And we're going to put an understood 1 right there and simplify by combining like terms, and get 3x plus 1 equals 2x plus 6. I would go ahead and subtract 2x from both sides, and that leaves me with x plus 1 equals 6. Subtract 1 from both sides. And x equals 5. So this one is one solution. You could go ahead and work these out just to make sure, because if you don't have the choice as being your first, you would have to go through every single problem to see, is it one or no, or infinite solutions. 13, which measurement is the best estimate for the length of a basketball court? Okay, first we need to think about the inch and know that when you have negative exponents here, that is basically going to give you a fraction, because they're going to be very small. And if we know fractions are not even a whole, you know that that cannot be a basketball court. Okay? And 1 times 10 to the first power is going to give you 10. And 10 inches is not even close to a basketball court. That's not even a ruler. So you know that you can't have a basketball court a ruler. Okay? So on D, that would be 1,000 inches, and that would be your largest. So D is your correct answer. 14, which numbers are irrational? Select all that apply. Here, again, we're studying rational and irrational, so you've got to know your difference. Rationals, repeating, fractions, terminating. Irrationals cannot turn to fractions. Some of this is the same as number 1, but we have some differences also. So this one is repeating, which makes it rational. This one is a fraction, which makes it rational. Now, this is a fraction, but that's not what makes it rational, because we also have pi, and pi is irrational. So we need to do some simplifying. So pi divided by pi is 1, which makes it rational. Now, 1/2 times pi, if you put that in your calculator, you will get a messy, long decimal that cannot turn into a fraction. So this one is irrational. And on E, that is a non-perfect square, which is also a messy decimal. So that is also irrational. (15), which decimal number is equivalent to negative 209/4? So if you will look at this, you have a negative, you have 209 divided by 4. So it's going to be a negative, and then whatever 209 divided by 4 is, if you will, put that in your calculator, and you're going to get A. Selena is solving an equation using the steps shown. So we're going to look at this, we're going to study it, we're going to see what all she's wanting, and then if in the next step Selena wants to use the multiplication property of equality, what should she do? Is she going to multiply only the fraction in the equation by 3? Is she going to multiply only the left side of the equation by 3? Is she going to multiply only the right side of the equation by 3? Or is she going to multiply both sides of the equation by 3? Okay, remember the equality part of it. So, here we're going to distribute, and when she does that, she gets this step, which is 1/3 of x plus 2. But remember, if you do 1/3 times 6, you get 6/3, which is 2, and that's how they got that 2. So here they moved the 2 to the other side, and that's how they got the 3. So now they're asking you, how is she going to use the multiplication property of equality? What should she do? So in order to do that, if you move something, okay, you are going to multiply the fraction by 3. And in order to do that, you got to do it to everything on both sides. So it's D. If you don't change everything, then it's not going to be a balanced equation. Consider the equation 2x plus 5 equals 8x minus 4. These I would probably solve this and then check it. I would not plug in yet because these are fraction answers, and you're going to end up doing more work in the end. So what I would do is simply subtract 2x from both sides. Leaves me with 5 equals 6x minus 4. Add 4 to both sides. And divide both sides by 6. And x equals 9/6, which will also reduce to 3/2, which is D. And if you will go back and plug in, you're going to see that 8 equals 8, so it checks out if you plug in 3/2 into your equation. Catherine solves the equation correctly, and then what is Catherine's solution? So we have to distribute on both sides. Again, I would go ahead and take the route of solving and not plugging in, even though yes, since it's multiple choice, you could plug in if you're not good of solving these equations, like this. Negative 8x plus 2 equals 2/3 x plus, and then when I simplify this, I get 4/3 because 2 times 2 is 4. Bring over your 3. So I'm going to go ahead and subtract 2 over 3x. That goes away. And this is going to simplify to negative 8 and 2/3 x plus 2 equals 4 over 3. And then I'm going to subtract 2 from both sides. And this becomes 8 and 2/3 x equals, and you get negative 2/3 here. Okay, so this looks very messy, very complicated, but it's not. These are fractions, but you have a calculator and you can keep them combined. So, know that you are going to divide both sides by negative 8 and 2/3. Okay, and this goes away. So what you do to one side, again, you have to do to the other. So, anything divided by itself is 1. That's why that canceled out. Okay, which left me with x. And a negative divided by a negative is a positive. So I know it's going to be positive. So what's happened is I'm dividing negative 2 over 3 divided by negative 8 and 2/3. And you're going to get 1 over 13, which is C. If you go back in and plug in to your equation, you are going to get that negative 0.6 repeating equals that on the other side too. What is the solution to the equation 5 over 2 times x minus 2 plus 2x minus 4 equals 9? So here, I'm going to distribute first. With this one being whole numbers, okay, as my answer choices, you could easily plug in to check to see which one worked. Because I want you to solve equations, and that's how we did it before, that's also gonna be how I decide to solve this one. Okay, so I'm going to multiply because this is distributive. And then when I multiply this, I get a negative 5 plus 2x minus 4 equals 9. Okay? And how I got the negative 5 is I did 5 over 2 times negative 2 over 1. And this canceled out and left me with negative 5. So I'm going to combine like terms. And then I'm going to combine like terms here and here. So if I combine 5 over 2x plus 2, I'm going to get 4.5x. And then this and this, I'm going to get negative 9 equals 9. So add 9 to both sides. 4.5x equals 18. Divide by 4.5. That cancels out, and x equals 4. Now here I would use my exponent rules, but you can also use your calculator to simplify. and I would multiply and get 5 to the negative 10th power times 5 to the 4th, which is going to give you 5 to the negative 6th power, which then you use your inverse and do 5 to the 6th, which is C. You could go ahead and put this in your calculator and get a decimal and see what you would match up, and you would still get C because the decimals on C match with the decimal up here. Here, if you do the square root of 15, because if you select the point that represents the square root of 15, and this is what you need to be looking for. This is not just 15. This is the square root of 15. And if you pick 15 as your answer, you're going to get it wrong because you need to be specific because they're asking you for the square root of 15. And you notice that these are the whole numbers, so you need to simplify that. And it gives you 3.87 about. So your answer is going to be C. So to work backwards, we're going to do this one, and it's true or false. And the square root of 49 is 7, because 7 times 7 is 49, so it's true. 8 times 8 is not 88, it is 64, so it's false. And this is the cube root of 8, so don't let that confuse you. And that equals 2, so 2 times 2 times 2 does equal 8, so it is true. And if you do 3 times 3 times 3, you get 27, not 9, so it's false. The last one, a list of numbers is shown. You are going to put and plot these numbers on a number line, which list is ordered from least to greatest. So you're going from smallest to the greatest. So you cannot compare these the way they are. You need to simplify. The square root of 50, the square root of 65, and the square root of 78. And when you do that, you're going to get this one as 7.0. You're going to get the square root of 65 is going to be about 8.1. And the square root of 78 is going to be about 8.8. So now if I listed these in order, I notice that 7 is my smallest, so the square root of 50 is my smallest. Then I'm going to notice that the rest of them are 8, so the next to the large, the other one is going to be 7.6. Okay, so if I want to stop here, I can go ahead and start comparing. And I notice that my first one is negative 50, the square root of 50, which is here and here, so I could go ahead and cross those out. Then I notice that what's left over is a 7.6, which is D. Because the rest are 8 point whatever, and those will be next. So I hope this helps. Slow down, go back, review for your 9 weeks test. If there's something that you don't know how to do, you could go back and replay videos from that unit. Good luck, and try to do your best. Message me if you have any questions, and I'll try to get back to you as quickly as I can. Thank you, and have a good day.